We were wrong about M1X MacBook Pros, like everything. We've been talking about M1X MacBook Pro since basically November, as soon as the Apple event for M1 was over. But in the past couple of days, so much new information has arrived, we might have been wrong about a lot. I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple leaks, news and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring my bell. And first of all, we have to address the notch in the room. Yes, that's right, we could actually get a notch at the top of the screen, or we might not. Here's the source of this rumour, which happens to feature a rather handsome cat. Now, that definitely looks notch-shaped, although it does appear to only include a single camera, no extra sensors or dot projectors that could enable Face ID. And we've also heard about that illuminated round Touch ID sensor, exactly where we found it before, at the end of the TouchBar, although the TouchBar is also a gunner on these new notebooks. It should be noted that Apple has got patents for individual displays within single keys, and replacing the touch bar with a row of physical keys that could still be customised to individual needs for apps would be pretty compelling as an option, although there have been no rumours suggesting that Apple will do that on this generation of MacBook Pro. Back to the maybe notch though, I think it's a strong 50-50 for me. It seems strange that we'd not heard about it before, and personally I don't know how the camera modules actually look under the bezels that we get on the current MacBook Pros. Are we simply relating to it because it's a similar shape to what we see on the iPhone? Maybe. But the display could just as easily have an iPad Pro style bezel that covers the camera module and is even all the way around. But if it in fact will have a notch, that could mean razor thin bezels around the rest of the display. Is that a good trade-off for a small notch into your display? I'd say probably yes, and remember that if it is real, all it will encroach on is the middle of your title bar, that menu bar at the top of the screen that's pretty much exclusively empty anyway in the middle. Plus, it's assumed that Apple will stick with this design for a number of years, so if we're wanting Face ID down the line, even if it's not here just yet, I think that it's probably a good idea to have a placeholder ready. It also looks pretty promising that the camera in the new MacBook Pros will be 1080p2 finally, so it might need a little bit of extra breathing room. And finally on this section, the software is also suggesting that the notch is real. The latest beta code for macOS reportedly mentions a safe zone similar to the one for the notch in the iPhone's iOS, which also points to the idea of having that notch. Let me know how much you hate the idea of it stealing some of your display in the comments. And speaking of displays, as these MacBook Pros are getting mini-LED displays, the case is likely to be a little bit thicker, especially on the lid, along with the idea of Apple flattening out the design, which will make it look even thicker because it doesn't taper down towards the edges. Happily, the latest rumours haven't robbed us of all of those ports that people have been oh so excited about coming back. So we're getting, as far as we know, 3 USB-C shaped holes, which could all be Thunderbolt as far as we know, a MagSafe or unbranded magnetic charging port, HDMI and an SD card reader, as well as a headphone jack. And onto the chips, and maybe they're not called M1X? I'm going to file this one under sketchy too, because it seems like some of the app logs that developers are seeing refer to an M1 Pro and an M1 Max as chip names. Now these could be marketing names, or they could be internal code names, or perhaps the graphics will be known as Pro and Max options. I think the third one is most likely, with these being the M1X Pro and M1X Max graphics, although I found it really interesting. I don't think we'll be getting it called M2 though, which is what Brian Tong mentioned this week, because where do they then go for the next efficiency chips when the MacBook Air, which sidebar is apparently also getting the notch, gets its redesign to next year. In terms of performance, I'm expecting these chips, whatever they're called, to absolutely scream, as Steve Jobs would say. 14,193 was the multi-core Geekbench score that I predicted back on November the 25th, 2020. So let's see how close I was. Bear in mind, I assumed that we'd get 4 efficiency cores in that, but it won't really move the needle too much on the overall score. So that's kind of what we know, or at least think we know, about the M1 Pro, M1 Max X something. But luckily we don't have long to wait until we actually see Apple release one in the current body, but with a different chip and a butterfly keyboard, just one USB-A port or something, and maybe it's more curvy, just like the Apple Watch that disappointed us all a few weeks ago. But very quickly, what else is on the cards beyond this for today's event? An upgraded, redesigned Mac Mini. The same, more faster a chip with the same 16 or 32 core graphics options as the MacBook Pros. A new composite top surface inlay that reminds us of the first Mac Mini design, and an external power supply like the new iMac but without the Ethernet on it, because that's built right in, alongside 2 USB-A 3.1 ports, 4 Thunderbolt ports, an HDMI port, and no headphone jack for some reason. I assume that Apple wants to pass audio through the monitor, but there you go, it hasn't got one, so that's kind of what we're going to have to get used to. Also, we could see 3rd generation AirPods with a more AirPods Pro design, no silicon tips but spatial audio and all that jazz, a wireless charging case as standard, and likely Find My support too, but no noise cancelling. The Pros have got to have something to play with. I do think we'll be seeing some of the software updates too, of course macOS Monterey, but also probably Apple's Pro apps going to 11. Probably full rewrites with iPad support included, so projects can be handed backwards and forwards. Final Cut, Logic and all their satellite side projects could be getting an upgrade, as well as the possibility of subscription options being added, or maybe a price cut to bring in more users. Outside chances for me would be the iMac, more likely a 24-inch iMac with an M1X option, but also maybe the larger one, although the 24-inch already being in production means it's very easy for Apple to just update that without it leaking anywhere, but we'll see. No one leaked the M1 iMac design ahead of time either, we just kind of knew that colours were coming thanks to the John Prosser, but we'll see. So what happens for the rest of today? At 4 PM UTC, 5 PM UK time, we'll be pre-streaming on the 941 podcast channel with Sarambai and Mark Sequence, and then as soon as the event is over, I'll be live on the main channel with our post-show roundup with questions and answers as usual, so set your reminders right now. iCave Answers today will be out at 1400 UTC, 2 hours from this show, as we have 15 questions already, so that lets me get a little bit deeper into a lot of the stuff that we've already mentioned today. So we'll wrap this one up. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget, join us in a couple of hours for iCave Answers, then a couple of hours after that we'll be starting our hype stream over on the podcast channel. And then see me back here for the post-show after party. It's going to be a big one. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.